The stranger's arrival. The night shift at Joe's Diner was always quiet, but tonight felt different. Sarah Miller wiped down the counter for the 100th time, trying to shake off the strange feeling that someone was watching her. The clock on the wall showed 11:45 p.m., and the empty diner's lights flickered in the darkness like tired eyes. Outside, rain fell softly on the empty parking lot. The neon "Open" sign cast red and blue shadows through the water-streaked windows. Sarah's fingers trembled slightly as she arranged the salt shakers again. Something in the air felt electric, like the moment before lightning strikes. The bell above the door chimed. Sarah looked up, and her world changed forever. A man stood in the doorway, water dripping from his black coat. But it wasn't his expensive clothes or his tall frame that made Sarah's breath catch in her throat. It was his eyes. They shone like liquid silver in the diner's fluorescent lights, seeming to shift and swirl like mercury. "We're still open," Sarah managed to say, her voice surprisingly steady. The stranger moved towards the counter with an odd grace, as if he wasn't quite touching the ground. Each step was too smooth, too perfect. "Coffee, please," he said. His voice was deep but soft, like distant thunder. When he sat at the counter, Sarah noticed he didn't make a single sound. No scrape of the stool, no rustle of clothes, just perfect silence. Sarah's hands shook slightly as she reached for the coffee pot. The stranger watched her every move with those impossible silver eyes. She could feel his gaze like a physical touch on her skin. As she set the coffee cup in front of him, their fingers brushed. The world exploded. A jolt of electricity shot through Sarah's body. The diner's lights burst in a shower of sparks. For one impossible moment, she saw things she couldn't understand. Stars spinning, creatures of light dancing, cities made of crystal floating in purple skies. Sarah stumbled backward, gasping. The stranger caught her arm, steadying her. Where his skin touched hers, waves of sensation pulsed. Wonder, fear, curiosity, and something else. Something hungry. "Let go," Sarah whispered. He did, immediately. The sensation stopped, but her skin still tingled where he had touched her. "I apologize," the stranger said, but he didn't sound sorry. He sounded fascinated. "The first contact is always intense. You handled it better than most." Sarah backed away until she hit the coffee maker. What are you?" The stranger smiled. His teeth were perfectly white, perfectly straight, too perfect. "My name is Adam, and what I am." He took a sip of coffee, those silver eyes never leaving her face. "That's a complicated question. One you're not ready to hear the answer to." "Not yet." "I don't understand," Sarah said. Her heart was racing, but strangely, she wasn't afraid. She should have been terrified, but instead she felt curious, alive, as if she'd been sleeping her whole life and was finally waking up. "You will," Adam said. He stood up, moving with that impossible grace. "Things are changing for you now, Sarah Miller." The touch was just the beginning. "You'll start noticing differences soon. When you do, I'll be watching. I'll be there when you need me." "How do you know my name? What differences? What did you do to me?" The questions tumbled out, but Adam was already walking to the door. He paused with his hand on the handle. "I've been looking for someone like you for a very long time," he said softly. "Someone who could survive the touch. Someone who could change." His silver eyes seemed to glow brighter. "Until we meet again, Sarah Miller. And we will meet again. Very soon." The bell chimed, and he was gone. Sarah stood frozen behind the counter, her skin still tingling. The coffee cup he'd used sat untouched, steam rising in lazy spirals. When she finally worked up the courage to touch it, she gasped. She could feel his lips where they'd touched the rim. Feel his warmth, his presence like an echo in her fingertips. Sarah quickly pulled her hand away, but it was too late. She could feel everything now. The age of the counter under her palms, the history in the walls, the emotions left behind by customers in their seats. The whole world had come alive under her fingers. And somewhere in the night, she knew those silver eyes were watching, waiting. This was just the beginning. Unwanted changes. Sarah's scream died in her throat as she stared at her bedroom walls. They were moving, rippling like water in a pond. The solid surface flowed and shifted in the pre-dawn light. Her clock showed 4:23 a.m., its red numbers reflecting off the strange waves that shouldn't exist. This wasn't the first weird thing she'd seen since meeting the silver-eyed stranger 3 days ago, but it was the most frightening. Without thinking, she reached out to touch the wall. The moment her fingers made contact, emotions flooded her mind. Fear, pain, sadness, joy, love. Decades of feelings from everyone who had ever lived in this house crashed through her consciousness like a tidal wave. Sarah jerked her hand back, but it was too late. The walls were speaking to her. No, not speaking. Remembering. She could feel the history of every person who had touched them. A child's first steps. A couple's bitter argument. A grandmother's last breath. Every moment preserved in the paint and plaster, waiting for someone who could feel them. "Make it stop," she whispered, pressing her hands against her ears. But the memories weren't coming through her ears. They were seeping into her skin, filling her mind with strangers' lives. She ran. Down the stairs, past the whispering walls, through the front door that trembled with its own stories. The cool night air hit her face as she burst outside in her pajamas, bare feet slapping against the damp grass. And there he was, Adam, standing under the streetlight like he'd been waiting for her. His silver eyes glowed brighter than the lamp above him. "The awakening is happening faster than I expected," he said, his perfect voice carrying across the yard. "Your sensitivity is extraordinary." Sarah stopped, keeping her distance. The grass beneath her feet buzzed with life, each blade telling her its own tiny story. She could feel worms moving in the earth, roots growing, insects crawling. The world was alive, overwhelming her with sensation. "What's happening to me?" Her voice cracked. Everything's alive. Everything has memories. I can feel all of it." Adam took a step forward. Sarah took a step back. "Your nervous system is evolving," he said, "developing new pathways, new ways of processing information. The touch we shared activated dormant potential in your genetic code. You did this to me on purpose. It wasn't a question." Yes, at least he didn't lie. "But not to harm you. To awaken you. To help you become what you were meant to be." "And what's that?" Sarah demanded. She could feel her neighbors' dreams seeping through their walls, taste their fears and desires on the night air. Adam smiled, and for a moment, his human appearance seemed to flicker. Something else showed through, something made of light and angles that didn't exist in human geometry. "A bridge," he said. "A living connection between your world and mine. The first of many, if we succeed." Sarah's legs gave out. She sat heavily on the grass, overwhelmed by sensation. Each blade pressed against her skin told her its life story, from seed to sprout to now. The earth beneath hummed with ancient memories. "I can't handle this," she whispered. "It's too much, too many feelings, too many memories. Make it stop." Adam knelt beside her, careful not to touch her. "I can teach you to control it, to filter the sensations, to choose what you feel. But you have to trust me." "Trust you?" Sarah laughed bitterly. "You did this to me without asking. You're not even human. Why should I trust you?" "Because right now, I'm the only one who understands what you're becoming. The only one who can help you survive the change." As if to emphasize his point, the world suddenly exploded into sharper focus. Sarah gasped as new sensations bombarded her. She could feel the magnetic field of the earth, taste radio waves in the air, see ultraviolet patterns in flower petals. Her mind stretched and bent, trying to process input it was never designed to handle. Adam's hand hovered near hers. "Let me help you. One touch, and I can show you how to control it." Sarah stared at his offered hand. Through her new senses, she could see energy flowing beneath his skin, complex patterns that hurt her eyes. He wasn't lying about being able to help, but he wasn't telling the whole truth either. "If I let you help me," she said carefully, "if I let you touch me again, what's the price?" His silver eyes gleamed. "Clever girl. Yes, there's a price. The more I help you, the stronger our connection becomes. The more you'll change. Eventually, you won't be entirely human anymore. And if I refuse, then the changes continue anyway, but without guidance, without control. Your mind will burn out trying to process too much input. I've seen it happen before." Sarah looked at her hands. Tiny arcs of electricity danced between her fingers now, responding to her emotions. The grass around her was growing visibly faster, reacting to her presence. She was changing whether she wanted to or not. "How many others?" she asked. "How many others have you done this to?" "Many," Adam admitted. "Over many years. You're the first to survive this long." Sarah felt cold despite the warm night. What happened to them? Their minds couldn't handle the expansion. He paused, choosing his words carefully. They lost themselves in the sensations, became overwhelmed, burned out. They died. Yes. Sarah stood up, shaking. Every cell in her body was screaming now, reaching for something just beyond human understanding. She could feel herself changing, evolving, becoming something new. And it hurt. "Why me?" she demanded. "Why did you choose me?" Adam stood too, his movements still impossibly graceful. "Because you're different. Special. Your genetic structure, your neural patterns. You're more compatible with the change than anyone I've found before. You could be the one we've been searching for. The successful bridge between worlds." Sarah looked at her childhood home, its walls still rippling with memories. Looked at her hands crackling with strange energy. Looked at Adam, who wasn't human but offered the only help she was likely to get. "If I agree," she said slowly, "you have to promise to tell me everything. No more secrets, no more lies. I want to know exactly what I'm becoming." Adam's smile was both beautiful and terrifying. "I promise to tell you everything you're ready to know." "That's not good enough. It's all I can offer. Some knowledge would destroy your mind before you're ready for it. The change must be gradual." Another wave of sensation hit her, and Sarah doubled over. Colors she had no names for exploded behind her eyes. The taste of starlight filled her mouth. The sound of Adam's splitting rang in her ears. "Time to choose, Sarah Miller," Adam said softly. "Take my hand and learn to control these changes, or try to face them alone. But choose quickly. Your mind won't survive much longer without guidance." Sarah straightened up, fighting through the pain and overwhelming input. She looked at Adam's offered hand, at the complex energy patterns swirling beneath his false human skin. Everything in her screamed that this was dangerous, that she should run, hide, fight against these changes. But she could feel the truth in his words through her new senses, feel the certainty that she wouldn't survive this alone. Sarah took a deep breath, tasting colors and feeling sounds, her world growing stranger by the second. And she made her choice. Hidden world. The old warehouse district looked different through Sarah's new senses. Buildings that seemed abandoned to normal eyes now pulsed with hidden energy. Networks of light and power flowed through walls that normal humans thought were empty. Every surface held secrets she could now feel beneath her fingertips. 2 weeks had passed since she'd taken Adam's hand. 2 weeks of learning to control her expanding abilities. 2 weeks of discovering that everything she knew about reality was a comfortable lie. "Focus," Adam said from beside her. "Don't just see the energy patterns. Feel their purpose. What are they hiding?" Sarah pressed her palm against the cold brick wall. At first, she felt only the usual cascade of memories and emotions. But Adam had taught her to push deeper, to sense what lay beneath the surface memories. "There's something else," she murmured. "Like a heartbeat, but not human. A whole building is breathing." "Good. Keep going." Sarah closed her eyes, letting her consciousness spread through the wall. The brick seemed to melt away under her touch, revealing layer after layer of reality that normal humans never saw. Then she found it. Her eyes snapped open. "There's a whole other structure inside," she gasped. "Built from energy, and something I don't have words for. It's huge, like a palace made of light, hidden inside this old warehouse." Adam smiled. "That's their meeting place, one of many spread across your world, hidden in plain sight." "There, you mean others like you. Similar, but not exactly like me. Different factions, different goals." His silver eyes gleamed. "Would you like to see them?" Sarah's heart raced. "Is it safe?" "No." At least he was honest. "But you need to know what you're becoming part of. What's really happening in your world." Before she could respond, new sensations bombarded her. Voices that weren't voices, music that wasn't music, colors that human eyes were never meant to see. "They're starting to arrive," Adam whispered. "We can observe through the walls. Your abilities have developed enough for that now." Sarah nodded, pressing both hands against the brick. Under Adam's guidance, she had learned to extend her senses through solid matter. The wall became transparent to her enhanced perception. What she saw took her breath away. The hidden structure was filled with beings of light and shadow. Some looked almost human, like Adam did. Others were completely alien, geometric patterns that moved and thought, clouds of shifting color with conscious purpose, crystalline structures that sang to each other in frequencies that made her teeth vibrate. "There are so many," she whispered, "all hidden here, right in the middle of the city. How do humans not notice?" "Your species sees what it expects to see," Adam said, "even when the truth is right in front of them. It's safer that way, usually." Sarah watched, fascinated, as the alien beings conducted what seemed to be a meeting. Their communications were complex. Patterns of light, pulses of energy, mathematically perfect tones that carried meaning she could almost grasp. "I can almost understand them," she said. "It's like hearing a language you're just starting to learn. The meaning is there, but just out of reach. Your mind is adapting. Soon you'll—" Adam stopped mid-sentence, his perfect posture tensed. "What's wrong?" Sarah asked. "One of them sensed us. We need to." A blast of energy shot through the wall where they were touching it. Sarah jerked back with a cry of pain. Her hands felt burned, though there were no physical marks. "Run." Adam grabbed her arm. "They don't know who you are yet. We need to keep it that way." They sprinted away from the warehouse. Behind them, Sarah could feel something emerging through the wall, a being of dark energy that moved like smoke but thought like fire. "What is that thing?" she gasped as they ran. "Security," Adam said grimly. "They guard their privacy viciously, and they can sense your new abilities. You're giving off energy patterns they recognize." They turned down an alley. Sarah could feel the dark entity getting closer. It moved faster than anything physical had a right to move. "Here." Adam pulled her through a door that hadn't been there a second ago. Sarah felt reality twist around them as they passed through what seemed to be a fold in space itself. They emerged in a different part of the city entirely. Sarah stumbled, disoriented by the sudden shift in location. Her enhanced senses screamed at the impossibility of what had just happened. "What? How did we?" "Shortcut," Adam said, steadying her. "Through spaces between spaces. Another skill you'll learn eventually." Sarah leaned against a wall, trying to catch her breath. Her whole body tingled from passing through the spatial fold. New sensations and abilities were awakening inside her, triggered by the experience. "Those beings back there," she said. "They're not all like you, are they? Some of them felt different, hostile." Adam's expression grew serious. "No, they're not like me. My faction believes in careful integration, gradual contact, creating bridges like you." His silver eyes darkened. "Others want more direct approaches. They see humanity as a resource to be used, not a species to partner with." And which group did we just spy on? A mixed gathering. Different factions meeting to discuss recent developments. He looked at her meaningfully. You're one of those developments, Sarah. The first successful human transformation in decades. Once they confirm your existence, both sides will want to either control you or eliminate you. Sarah slid down the wall to sit on the ground, overwhelmed. Why didn't you tell me this before? Would you have believed me? Could your mind have handled it? Adam knelt beside her. You needed to develop your abilities first, to see the truth for yourself. She looked at her hands. Traces of alien energy still danced between her fingers, responding to her agitation. The world around her was permanently changed now, layers of hidden reality visible to her enhanced senses. So what happens now? She asked. Now your real training begins. Adam helped her to her feet. You've seen what's out there. You know the stakes, and you know why you need to learn to defend yourself. From beings like that shadow thing. From everyone. My faction, their factions, even ordinary humans who might discover what you're becoming. You're unique, Sarah. The first successful bridge between worlds. That makes you valuable and dangerous. Sarah absorbed this, feeling the weight of her situation. She wasn't just changing anymore. She was becoming a pivot point between two worlds. A fact that made her both precious and hunted. Show me, she said finally. Show me everything I need to know to survive this. Adam's smile held both approval and warning. Remember, once you learn these things, there's no going back. No returning to your old life. No pretending the hidden world doesn't exist. Sarah looked around at the city, at the layers of reality she could now perceive, at the secret world hidden behind the mundane one. Her old life already felt like a dream. I'm already past that point, she said. Teach me. Adam nodded and held out his hand. Where their fingers met, energy sparked and danced. The connection between them grew stronger with each touch, changing her further, making her more like him. But for the first time, Sarah welcomed the change, because now she understood. In this hidden war between alien factions, being human wasn't going to be enough to survive. Above them, unseen by normal eyes, strange lights moved across the sky. The hidden world was stirring, awakening, preparing for something big. And Sarah was caught in the middle of it all. The hunt begins. The mountain cave glowed with Sarah's practice attempts. Spheres of energy and colors she once had no words for floated around her like strange fruit, each one representing a different lesson Adam had taught her. 3 weeks had passed since they'd discovered the alien meeting place, and her powers had grown exponentially. Your control is improving, Adam said, watching as she wove patterns of light between her fingers. But you're still thinking like a human. Stop trying to shape the energy. Let it shape itself through you. Sarah closed her eyes, letting her consciousness expand the way he'd taught her. The cave's crystals sang to her in mathematical harmonies. The rock walls pulsed with geological memories millions of years old. And beneath it all, she felt the deeper rhythms, the quantum dance of reality itself. Better. Adam's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. No. He stopped. Sarah felt it too. A disturbance in the energy fields around them. Something was coming. Multiple somethings. We've been found, Adam said quietly. His human disguise flickered, showing glimpses of his true form. A beam of crystalline light and impossible geometries. The shadow hunters. Sarah's heart raced. Like the one from the warehouse. Worse. These are specialists, designed to track and eliminate anomalies. His silver eyes met hers. Like you. The temperature in the cave dropped suddenly. Dark energy began seeping through the walls like black mercury, forming into shapes that hurt Sarah's enhanced vision to look at directly. Remember your training, Adam said, moving to stand beside her. Everything I've taught you. You'll need it all now. The shadow hunters materialized fully, 5 entities that seemed to be made from solid darkness. They had no faces, but Sarah could feel their focused malevolence. Through her new senses, she could see they were constructed beings, not natural ones, living weapons created by one of the hostile alien factions. The human bridge must be eliminated. They spoke in unison, their voices like static and breaking glass. The experiment ends now. Adam's response was a blast of pure energy that turned one of the shadow hunters to dissipating smoke. "Run," he shouted to Sarah. "I'll hold them." A tendril of darkness wrapped around his throat, cutting off his words. The remaining hunters attacked simultaneously, their forms stretching and warping in ways that broke the laws of physics. Sarah didn't run. Instead, she reached out with her new senses, feeling the quantum structure of reality around her. Adam had taught her that the physical world was just one layer, that space itself could be folded like paper if you understood its true nature. As a shadow hunter lunged for her, she folded space. The hunter passed through where she had been, its dark form dissolving as it hit the trap she'd created. A pocket of folded space that led nowhere and everywhere at once. Its scream echoed in dimensions humans couldn't perceive. "Impossible," the remaining hunters hissed. "A human should not have this power." "I'm not exactly human anymore," Sarah said. Energy crackled between her fingers as she accessed deeper layers of her transformation. "And you're trespassing in my practice space." She could feel Adam's surprise and approval as she went on the offensive. All those weeks of training, of learning to see reality's true structure, had prepared her for this moment. She moved like water, like light, like thought itself, folding space around her to avoid their attacks while striking back with precisely focused energy. Another hunter dissolved, caught between dimensions she created, and collapsed. A third shattered into quantum particles as she unraveled its constructed form with a touch. But the remaining hunter was learning, adapting. It split into multiple copies, surrounding her with mirrors of darkness. "Your power is stolen," they said in their broken glass voice. "You are an aberration, a mistake to be corrected." "No," Sarah said, feeling strength flow through her connection with Adam. "I'm an evolution, a bridge between worlds, and you're about to learn why that matters." She reached deep into her new abilities, accessing something she'd only theorized about during training. If space could be folded, if reality had layers, then what she was about to attempt should be possible. Sarah began to sing. It wasn't human singing. The notes existed in frequencies beyond normal sound, in mathematical patterns that reshaped local space-time. The cave's crystals resonated with her voice, amplifying the effect. The shadow hunters screamed as reality itself turned against them. Their dark forms began to unravel, pulled apart by harmonics that attacked the very foundation of their constructed existence. When the last note faded, the hunters were gone. Only scattered particles of dark energy remained, already dissipating into nothing. Sarah stumbled, drained by the effort. Adam caught her before she could fall. That was... He paused, searching for words. "Unprecedented. Even among my people, manipulating reality through harmonic resonance takes centuries to master." "I didn't master it," Sarah said, leaning against him for support. "I just understood it. Like the knowledge was already there, just waiting to be used." She looked up at him. "Is that part of what's happening to me? Am I accessing knowledge from your species somehow?" Adam's expression was unreadable. "Perhaps. Or perhaps you're becoming something entirely new. Something neither human nor like my kind." Before Sarah could respond, a new sensation washed over her. Through her enhanced perception, she felt ripples spreading from their location. Echoes of the battle reaching across hidden dimensions. "They'll send more hunters," she said, understanding instinctively. "Stronger ones." "Yes." Adam helped her stand straight. "That display of power will have attracted attention from all factions. Some will want to study you, others to destroy you. None will leave you in peace now. Then we need to move." Sarah was already gathering her strength, preparing for what came next. "But first, I want you to tell me the truth." "What truth?" "You knew this would happen. You knew I had this potential when you chose me. What I just did. It's why you've been looking for someone like me, isn't it? Adam was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice held new respect. Yes, my faction has been searching for centuries for a human who could not only survive the transformation but thrive in it. Someone who could become a true bridge between worlds, accessing abilities from both species and perhaps developing entirely new ones. Why? What's coming that you need someone like me? War, Adam said simply. A war that will affect both our worlds. The hostile factions grow stronger, more aggressive. Soon they'll move openly against humanity. We need bridges, beings who understand both sides, who can help unite our species against the common threat. Sarah absorbed this, feeling the weight of it settle over her. And if I don't want to be part of your war? That's no longer an option. Adam gestured at the scattered remnants of the shadow hunters. You're part of it now, whether you choose to be or not. The only choice is whether you face it alone or with allies. Sarah looked at her hands, still glowing with power she barely understood. The cave crystals sang to her in frequencies that held secrets of the universe. Reality itself seemed to bend slightly around her, responding to her awakened awareness. She wasn't human anymore, but she wasn't quite what Adam was either. She was something new, something in between. Exactly what both sides feared and desired. Teach me more, she said finally. Everything you know. Every ability, every secret. If there's a war coming, I need to be ready. Adam nodded, but his silver eyes held concern. The more you learn, the more you'll change. The human you were is already gone. Sarah finished. I accepted that the moment I chose to fight instead of run. She straightened up, letting power flow through her renewed. Now show me what's next. Above them, through layers of rock and reality, Sarah felt more ripples in the quantum field. More hunters would come. More battles would follow. The war Adam spoke of was approaching faster than anyone had planned. But she wasn't the same frightened waitress who'd served coffee to a stranger with silver eyes. She was becoming something else, something new. Something that might just change the course of two worlds. Betrayal and truth. The hidden library existed in a space between dimensions. Sarah floated in its center, surrounded by records stored in crystalline structures that contain not just information, but entire experiences. Her enhanced senses could read them now, translating alien knowledge directly into her consciousness. She hadn't meant to find this place. During another training session, she'd accidentally slipped through a fold in reality, something Adam had warned her not to do without guidance. But what she found here changed everything. The truth crystals glowed around her, each one containing memories that shattered her understanding of her situation, of Adam, of herself. She wasn't the first, not even close. Thousands of humans before her, across centuries, all chosen carefully, all transformed, all part of Adam's endless experiments to create the perfect bridge between worlds. Most had died horribly, their minds and bodies unable to handle the change. Some had gone insane, their consciousness fragmenting as they touched alien realities they couldn't comprehend. A few had survived longer, becoming partial bridges before burning out. Sarah watched their stories play out in the crystalline records, feeling their experiences as if they were her own. Young women and men, all chosen for specific genetic markers, all approached by a mysterious stranger with silver eyes, all drawn in by his otherworldly charm, his promises of transformation and transcendence. All used, all discarded when they failed. I wondered when you'd find this place. Adam's voice came from behind her. Sarah didn't turn around. She kept her eyes on the memory crystal in front of her, watching another failed experiment dissolve into quantum particles. How many? She asked quietly. You've already seen the number. I want to hear you say it. A pause. 3,742 attempts over 4 centuries. Sarah finally turned to face him. Adam stood, or rather floated, in his true form here, a being of crystalline light and impossible geometry. She could see him clearly now, her transformed senses no longer limited by human perception. All those lives, she said, all those people you manipulated, transformed, destroyed. Each one was necessary. Each failure taught us more about the process, led us closer to success. His silver eyes held no remorse. Led us to you. Because I'm different. Special. Sarah's laugh was bitter. No, I've seen the records. I'm just the latest version of your experiment. Refined. Improved. But still just another test subject. You're surviving longer than any other. Because you learned from your mistakes. You learned exactly which genetic markers to look for, which personality types would adapt better, which approach would make us trust you more easily. Energy crackled around her hands as anger built. You perfected your technique over centuries of destroying lives. Adam moved closer, his form shifting in ways that once would have hurt her eyes to look at. Now she saw him clearly, every layer of his existence, every facet of his alien nature. Everything I told you about the war was true, he said. The hostile factions are real. The threat to both our worlds is real. We need bridges between species to survive what's coming. But you didn't tell me I was just the latest attempt, that you've been fine-tuning this process for centuries, sacrificing thousands of humans to perfect your technique. Sarah's voice shook with rage. You let me think I was special, chosen, when really I'm just the latest model in your endless experiments. You are special, Adam insisted. You've survived longer than any other subject. Your powers are developing faster, stronger. The changes are stabilizing in ways we never. We? Sarah caught the word. You mean your faction. The ones who supposedly believe in careful integration and gradual contact. She gestured at the memory crystals around them. This doesn't look very careful or gradual to me. This looks like centuries of systematic experimentation on humans. Testing. Refining. Watching us die over and over until you got the process right. Adam's form flickered with what might have been frustration. You don't understand. The war is coming faster than expected. The hostile factions grow stronger every day. We needed to accelerate our research by destroying thousands of lives to save billions. Now Adam's calm facade cracked. Do you think I enjoyed watching them die? Feeling their minds break? But each failure brought us closer to success, to creating bridges that could unite our species against the real threat. Sarah absorbed this, floating among the records of centuries of death and suffering. She could feel the truth in his words, about the war, about the threat. But she could also feel what he wasn't saying. Show me your true memories, she said suddenly. Adam went very still. What? You taught me how to read these crystals, how to access stored memories. Sarah's enhanced senses focused on him like a weapon. Show me your memories. Let me see the truth about why you really started these experiments. That would be unwise. Because I'd learn you're lying about something. Sarah moved closer. Because I'd see the real reason behind all this. The process isn't complete, Adam said, backing away slightly. Your mind isn't ready for direct contact with my memories. It could destroy you. Like it destroyed all the others. Sarah gestured at the surrounding records. Or are you afraid I'll see something you've been hiding? Something about the real purpose of creating these bridges. Energy crackled between them as Adam's form shifted defensively. You're letting emotion cloud your judgment. Everything I've done has been necessary. For both our species. Prove it. Sarah held out her hand, power flowing around her fingers. Share your memories. Let me see the truth. Sarah. If you don't, she interrupted, I'll find someone who will. Maybe those hostile factions you're so worried about would be interested in talking to your most successful experiment. It was a bluff, but it hit home. Adam's form rippled with what might have been alarm. You wouldn't. They'd destroy you. Or worse, use you too. To what? Sarah pressed. What aren't you telling me about why they want to stop these experiments? The energy between them intensified as their confrontation reached a breaking point. Sarah could feel her powers responding to her emotions, reaching out to touch the quantum structure of reality itself. The library around them trembled. "Your transformation isn't complete," Adam said finally. "If you leave now, if you break the process, the changes could destabilize. You could end up like the others. Or maybe that's just another manipulation, another way to keep me dependent on you." Sarah's voice hardened. "I'm done being your experiment, Adam. Done being the latest version of your perfect bridge." The library shuddered again as her powers flexed. Cracks appeared in the dimensional walls around them. "Sarah, stop. You'll collapse the pocket dimension." "Good." Sarah reached out with her enhanced senses, feeling the structure of the space around them. "Then all these records of your experiments will be lost. No more using them to perfect your technique. No more learning from past failures to make better test subjects. You don't understand what you're doing." "I understand perfectly." Sarah's power pulsed outward, widening the cracks in reality. "I understand that you've spent centuries destroying lives to create your perfect bridge. Well, congratulations. You succeeded. I'm everything you wanted." The dimensional walls began to crumble. "Just not in the way you planned." Adam's form blazed with power as he moved to stop her. "Sarah, please, let me explain everything. The real reason." But Sarah was done listening. Done being manipulated. Done being an experiment. She reached out with all her enhanced senses, all the power Adam had taught her to use, and pulled. Reality shattered around them. The hidden library collapsed, its crystalline records falling through cracks in space-time. Centuries of documented experiments, of death and suffering and failure, disappeared into the void. Sarah felt herself falling too, tumbling through layers of broken dimensions. But she wasn't afraid anymore. Adam had taught her well. Too well, perhaps. She knew how to fold space now, how to find paths through the quantum foam of reality, how to survive in the spaces between dimensions. As she fell, she caught one last glimpse of Adam's true form, reaching for her with appendages of light and geometry. His silver eyes blazed with something that might have been fear. Good, she thought. Let him be afraid. Because now she knew the truth, knew what she was. Not just a bridge between worlds, but the successful culmination of centuries of experimentation. The perfect fusion of human and alien that Adam's faction had been trying to create. And she was done being anyone's experiment. Sarah reached out, folded reality around herself, and disappeared into the quantum void. Let Adam chase her. Let his faction hunt her. Let the hostile forces try to destroy her. She wasn't just a bridge anymore. She was something entirely new. And she had questions that needed answers, about the real war, about Adam's true motives, about the destiny she was supposedly created for. Somewhere in the spaces between dimensions, Sarah Miller smiled. The hunter had created the perfect weapon. Now it was her turn to hunt for truth. The choice. The shadow beings had Sarah surrounded, but she wasn't afraid. After 3 days of quantum wandering through the spaces between dimensions, after discovering truths in forgotten corners of reality, fear seemed like a distant memory from her human past. "We can undo what was done to you," the shadows whispered in their glass-breaking voices. "Return you to your human form. Free you from the transformation." Sarah floated in their midst, her transformed body glowing with internal light. The abandoned subway tunnel around them existed in multiple dimensional states, partly in normal space, partly in the quantum void where the shadow beings dwelled. "Why would you help me?" she asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Your faction wants to stop the creation of bridges between worlds." "Because you are different," they hissed in unison. "You have seen the truth about Adam's experiments, about the real purpose behind the bridges." Sarah's enhanced senses studied their dark forms, reading the complex energy patterns that made up their constructed bodies. "You're not telling me everything. Just like Adam didn't." The shadows rippled. "We offer you choice. Freedom. Adam offered only chains disguised as transcendence." "Show me," Sarah demanded. Show me what you know about why he really created the bridge program. The shadow beings flowed together, forming a pool of living darkness on the tunnel floor. Images began to form on its surface, memories stored in the quantum structure of their existence. Sarah saw Adam in his true form, attending a council of his faction's leaders. Saw them discussing not defense against hostile forces, but invasion, colonization, the systematic transformation of humanity into a hybrid species that could be controlled. The bridges weren't meant to unite the worlds. They were meant to transform one world into a version of the other. The war he warned you about, the shadows whispered, is one his faction plans to start. Not to defend humanity, but to change it forever. Sarah watched more memories play out across the dark surface. Centuries of experiments, of failed transformations, not just to perfect the process, but to create beings who could spread the change to others. Living catalysts for the wholesale transformation of the human species. And I'm the first success, she said quietly. The first bridge stable enough to survive passing the change to others. Yes, the shadows swirled around her. Your touch could begin the cascade. Through you, they could transform humanity one contact at a time. An invisible invasion. Sarah looked at her hands, glowing with transformed energy. Everything Adam had taught her about controlling her powers, about making connections through touch, it hadn't just been for her protection. It had been preparation for her real purpose. Why are you showing me this? She asked the shadows. What do you want from me? We offer you restoration, they said. Return to human form. End the bridge program forever. Save your species from transformation. Sarah considered this. And if I refuse, then the change will complete itself. You will become the catalyst they created you to be. The key to humanity's transformation. The shadows pulsed with dark purpose. We cannot allow that. So my choices are: let you try to change me back, or fight you. Correct. Sarah laughed softly. The sound echoed strangely through multiple dimensions. You're making the same mistake Adam did, thinking you can control what I become. She reached out with her enhanced senses, feeling the quantum structure of reality around them. The shadows tensed, preparing either to help her or destroy her. But Sarah had learned things in her dimensional wanderings. Things neither Adam's faction nor the shadow beings knew about. The spaces between worlds held secrets older than either species. There's always another choice, she said. Before the shadows could react, Sarah touched the dark surface of their memory pool. But instead of reading it, she wrote something into its quantum structure. New information. New truth. The shadows recoiled as the information spread through their connected consciousness. Impossible, they hissed. These memories, this knowledge. I found it in the spaces between, Sarah said. In places your wars never reached. There were others before both our species. They left messages for anyone who could read them. The shadows writhed as they processed what she'd shown them. The bridges, they were not meant for conquest. No, Sarah agreed. They were meant for something else entirely. Something neither your faction nor Adam's understood. She rose into the air, her transformed body glowing brighter. The shadows watched her with what might have been awe or fear. I've seen the real truth, Sarah continued, about why the ability to create bridges exists, about what's really coming. She looked at her hands again, understanding finally what she was becoming. Adam's faction wanted to use it for invasion. Yours wanted to stop them, but neither of you saw the real purpose. What purpose? The shadows whispered. Sarah smiled. There's a reason both our species evolved the potential for connection. A reason the spaces between worlds exist. Something is coming. Something that threatens all realities, all dimensions. She gestured, and the air filled with quantum projections. Information she'd gathered in her wanderings through dimensional space. The shadows absorbed it, their dark forms trembling with new understanding. The bridges aren't meant for war, Sarah said softly. They're meant for survival, for uniting all conscious species against something bigger than our petty factional conflicts. The void consumers, the shadows whispered. The reality devourers. They're real. Very real. And getting closer. Sarah floated down to face them directly. So now I have a different choice to offer you. Both your faction and Adams can keep fighting your old wars. Keep trying to control or prevent the bridges. She held out her hand, letting transformed energy play across her fingers. Or you can help me prepare all our worlds for what's really coming. Help me create true bridges, not for conquest, not for power, but for survival. The shadows swirled in agitation. Our faction will not easily accept this. Neither will Adams, but they'll have to. Sarah's voice held new authority. Not just power, but deep understanding. Because I'm not just a bridge anymore. I'm a bridge maker, the first of many who will help unite all conscious species against the void. She rose again, her transformed body pulsing with purpose. So what's your choice? Keep fighting the old wars, or help me prepare for the real one. The shadows were silent for a long moment. Then they bowed, their dark forms rippling with acceptance. We will. Consider your words, they said. Discuss with our faction leaders. But until then, we will not hunt you, will not interfere. The shadows began to fade. Watch and wait, bridge maker. Your path is your own. They disappeared, leaving Sarah alone in the tunnel. But she wasn't really alone anymore. The knowledge she'd found in the spaces between filled her with purpose. Understanding. Direction. She had a choice to make now. Not the false choices others tried to force on her, but a real one. About how to use her power. How to prepare humanity and all other species for what was coming. Sarah smiled as she folded space around herself, preparing to travel through the quantum void again. She had work to do, bridges to build, truths to share, and somewhere in the darkness between dimensions, ancient beings of light and void watched with approval as their long-ago plans finally began to unfold. Transformation complete. The void was beautiful from here. Sarah floated at the edge of known dimensions, watching as reality itself unraveled into quantum foam at the boundaries of existence. Her transformed body had evolved far beyond its original human form, becoming something that could exist in spaces where normal matter would dissolve. You shouldn't be here. Adam's voice came from behind her. The final transformation isn't complete. These spaces are dangerous. Sarah turned to face him. In the quantum void, his true form blazed like a constellation of living geometry and light. But she could see the strain in his energy patterns. He wasn't meant to exist this close to the void either. I found your other laboratories, she said. The ones hidden in pocket dimensions. Saw what you were really trying to create. She gestured at the writhing void. You weren't just making bridges between worlds. You were trying to make beings who could survive out here. Fight out here. Adam's form shifted uncomfortably. You've learned too much. I've learned exactly enough. Sarah's transformed body pulsed with new power. The void consumers are real. I've seen them. Vast beings that devour entire realities. And they're coming. You don't understand. No, you don't understand. Sarah's voice resonated across multiple dimensions. I know why you started the bridge program. Why you spent centuries experimenting on humans. You thought you were preparing defenses, creating weapons to fight the void consumers. She floated closer to him, her evolved senses reading the quantum patterns of his thoughts. But you never understood what the transformation was really meant for. What the Ancient Ones designed it to do. Adam's silver eyes flickered. The Ancient Ones. You found their records. Better. Sarah smiled. I've spoken to them. The quantum void rippled around them as Sarah raised her hands. Reality folded, unfolded, refolded in impossible ways. A doorway opened in space itself. Through it stepped beings of pure light and shadow, older than either human or Adam's species. The architects as Sarah had come to know them. The original creators of the bridge technology. Impossible, Adam whispered. They vanished months ago. We waited. The architects spoke in frequencies that existed between dimensions, waited for the right bridge to be created. the right understanding to evolve. Sarah nodded. They didn't leave instructions for making weapons, Adam. The transformation was never meant to create soldiers for a war against the void. Then what? It was meant to create healers, Sarah said softly. Beings who could repair the damage the void consumers cause, restore devoured realities, bridge the gaps they leave behind. The architects moved around them, in patterns too complex for normal space to contain. The void consumers are a natural force, they explained, like entropy. They cannot be fought, only balanced. All this time, Sarah continued, you thought you were making weapons, but really, you were helping fulfill the architect's plan, creating beings who could heal reality itself. Adam's form trembled as understanding washed over him. The other experiments, they failed because you were pushing them toward the wrong purpose. Sarah finished, training them to fight when they should have been learning to heal. The human capacity for empathy, for connection, wasn't a weakness to overcome. It was the essential ingredient. The quantum void churned around them as the truth resonated through multiple dimensions. Sarah could feel her final transformation approaching, not a violent metamorphosis into a weapon, but an evolution into something far more powerful. It's not too late, she said to Adam. Your faction, the shadow beings, all the species trying to prepare for war. They can learn the truth, help with the real work. And what work is that? Sarah gestured at the void. Building bridges between all conscious species, creating networks of healers to repair reality. Preparing for the void consumers not by fighting them, but by healing their damage. Maintaining the balance. The architects moved in complex patterns of approval. The time approaches, they said. The final transformation. The first true bridge healer awakens. Sarah felt it beginning, not just in her body, but in the quantum structure of her consciousness. The power to fold space was transforming into something greater. The ability to not just travel between dimensions, but to repair them, heal them, restore them. Make your choice, Adam, she said as light began to spiral around her. Keep making weapons for a war you can't win, or help me show everyone the real purpose of the bridges. Adam watched as Sarah's form began to transform one final time. The architects moved around her in patterns that rewrote the local structure of reality. In the distance, the void consumers approached, vast beings of unreality that devoured dimensions. But Sarah wasn't afraid anymore. She understood now. The void consumers were part of reality's cycle. They broke things down so new things could be built. The healers were meant to guide that process, repair what could be saved, help conscious species survive and adapt. I choose to learn, Adam said finally, his silver eyes reflecting the light of Sarah's transformation. To understand what you've become, what you were always meant to be. Sarah smiled as the final changes took hold. Her consciousness expanded across multiple dimensions. She could feel the quantum structure of reality itself, could see where it needed healing, strengthening, bridging. The architect spoke one final time. The first bridge healer rises. Others will follow. The balance will be maintained. Sarah reached out with her new awareness, feeling the void consumer's approach. Feeling also the infinite possibilities for healing, for connection, for building something new from what they would break down. She was no longer just Sarah Miller, the waitress who served coffee to a stranger with silver eyes. No longer just a bridge between worlds. She was a healer of realities, the first of a new kind of being that would help guide the evolution of consciousness itself. Come, she said to Adam, holding out a hand that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Let me show you what the bridges were really meant to be. Above them, through layers of quantum space, the void consumers drew closer. But Sarah smiled. She understood now, truly understood, that endings were just opportunities for new beginnings. And she had universes to heal.